I could have your attention, please, to get this started. My name is Dave Duckworth, and I'm with the Country Club Board. And I just want to give some background. One of the reasons we're doing this is at the last quarterly meeting, we had several residents give us some feedback, especially after the California fires, with concerns of our situation and what can we do about it. And so one of the ideas that we met with our board immediately to say, well, first of all, we got to get to the fire department, which we did, and they met with us immediately. And with that, we decided it would be a great idea to have a community forum where we can talk directly to the folks who can make things happen. So,
Microphone.
well, I'm going to be done. He'll take the microphone.
Okay, good.
So with that, I will use that as a chance to introduce Will Brewer with the Daisy Mountain Fire Department.
All right, I'm gonna do my best to use the microphone. Does that help?
I think you need to turn it on.
It's on.
Congratulations.
It really need to
There
be.
you go.
Okay. I'm not used to using my microphone, so. All right. First of all, my name is Will Brewer. I work for Daisy Mountain Fire and Medical. I'm currently in a wildland coordinator position. Before I get into, since I'm gonna do most of the talking, before I get into who I am, my background, start introducing our department and all of this information you guys are about to get. I first wanna introduce Chris Reed is here from Arizona State Forestry Department of Forestry and Fire Management. I'm gonna get into a little bit later about the coordination that we have with all the agencies that we coordinate with from year to year. Chris is one of those. His position right now is in the prevention for wildland fire, so he's here for support us, to support you guys, and he's brought materials for Firewise in the back so that you guys have some stuff to take with you, and not just listening to me for an hour. So, good. Chris, do you need anything?
No, just for me, thank you for taking the time to come on out. California recently, it's got a lot of our.
Great. The gentleman standing right next to him is actually my boss, so that is Chief Dave Hamilton. He's in charge of Daisy Mountain Special Operations. So if you guys think of the different divisions, different responsibilities in a fire department, Chief oversees all of special operations. So if you pay attention to any of our news feeds, Instagram, anything like that, he's in charge of technical rescue, hazmat, wildland, and then a small bit of aviation that kind of falls under technical rescue. So he oversees a lot of our department, and most of them, he oversees the wildland program, which then is where I fit in. So, Chief, anything from you?
No, sir, thank you all for coming out and participating in this event.
Okay. So, again, my name is Will Brewer. Currently, right now, I am a engineer, paramedic, hazmat, technical rescue, and wildland certified for our department. That being said, my history goes back to, I have my degree from NAU. My emphasis was in wildland fire ecology and management. So I graduated from the School of Forestry. I did 3 years working for the Forest Service on Type 6 engine, hotshot, Type 3 engines. Then I actually worked for Arizona State Forestry for about 4 years. I oversaw 5.5 counties of fire suppression, worked with the inmate crews, and all the cooperators and coordinators like Daisy Mountain across 5.5 counties. 2015, I got hired with Daisy Mountain, and I've been pretty much the day I got off probation, I was handed wildland training on and just said, help us. And so here I am. So going into this season, I've got 16 seasons of wildland fire under my belt. Some have been harder than others, but that's kind of the background there. More importantly than all of that, that's why it's weird for me to use a microphone, is I am a father of 4, happily married, so I'm used to projecting my voice, so using a microphone is just a little bit weird. So yeah, any questions just before we get started? As the wildland coordinator for Daisy Mountain, I've been in charge of our wildland training for all of our members for the past 10 years. So every season that we go into a wildland fire season, I'm the one that prepares and does an annual wildland refresher for our firefighters. You guys will be happy to know Daisy Mountain is actually one of the highest trained departments in the valley for brush fire response. As far as the training that we do, the coordination that we do with our partners, both state and federal, we definitely are setting the bar, and a lot of our neighboring departments turn to us for additional answers and training. So that's exciting. Hopefully you guys can have as much pride in that as we do. We work very hard for it. We have a great wildland team. That wildland team not only serves you guys in the community, but once we do get a season to kind of ramp down, we start sending resources out and assisting the rest of the nation in a deployable sense. So the reason, so Palisades, right? That's the recent news with brush fires. Part of the reason we didn't send trucks was because we were under severity as well. In other words, we were at risk. So it was really hard for us to take some of our resources and send them out of state. So that is something that we are actively monitoring and changing to make sure that you as our community come first before we go elsewhere. So let me do a little bit of introduction. I'm gonna see how close I need to be. There we go. Okay. What I want to do is set the stage of your department and the responses that we have and the trucks that we're responding to brush fires with. And this includes medical, so EMS calls, structure fires, the whole gamut. So all of these resources are in play, but since we're in the arena of brush fires, this is important. So Daisy Mountain has 6 stations, soon to be 7. 144 is the one that is being built on 24th Street and Cloud, right? So that is in the process. You have 6 fire engines, so those are the big trucks, so 1 at each station. Every station in the district has a brush truck. 142, which is the one here in Anthem, is a much bigger brush truck. Has anybody seen it rolling around? It's what we call a Type 3. It's got a little bit more water and a bigger pump on it, and is key in structure protection. So that is the only one that looks different. The rest of them are called Type 6 engines. So those are your, they kind of look like a real big pickup truck with pump and fire apparatus stuff on the back. So you'll see those rolling around. 5 out of our 6 stations have water tenders. To give you a perspective, currently 4 of those 5 are 3,000 gallon water tenders, and then 1 of those is a 2,000 gallon water tender. Got that right? It's constantly changing. We're moving trucks around the district. So those water tenders are important in our wildland response. Why? We don't have water out there. We don't have hydrants. One of the biggest diversities of our department is the fact that Anthem is really the only one that has a reliable hydrant system. The rest of the district, we've got a few pockets of water systems, but for the most part, we bring our own water to the ship. That's why we have these water tenders that are sitting in stations with 3,000 or so gallons of water sitting there. We also have 3 ambulances that are in service. One of them is staffed with firefighters. The other one is a civilian program. And then we have 2 battalions. One battalion is a 40-hour, so they work Monday through Thursday, 10-hour days. And then the other is a 48-96, so a full 7-day-a-week battalion that you see running around in brush truck. Before I get any further, is everybody hearing me fine? Zoomland good? Yeah, okay. I don't want to get too far along. The Wildland Liaison Program. So again, on my shirt says Wildland Liaison. One of the programs that falls under Wildland Response is this Wildland Liaison Program. We call it CAR 1419. It is the CAR 19 program as far as an automatic aid. So each district that participates kind of gets their own numeric. We are District 14, so we are CAR 1419. District 14, and then the 19 is our identifier. 19 came from the Yarnell 19. So this is something that we put in place as a liaison for both safety effectiveness, and most importantly too, the coordination with a number of different agencies that we respond with. Daisy Mountain has a district boundary, right? Within that district boundary is state, private, Bureau of Land Management, and US Forest Service. Even though we have the initial response to something that falls within or right next to our district, land management still plays a part. Those agencies operate a little bit different than we do here in the automatic aid system and the 911 system. My job as a wildland liaison is to be that conduit between those agencies. Because wildland verbiage, as we're gonna get into here in a little bit, is slightly different than our other structure verbiage. So my job is to make sure everybody's communicating well across that so that we can have a unified command in fire suppression. I know we're presenting in Zoom land. I probably should mention, is this mic live here as well?
It is, yes, for
Okay.
questions.
So I please want to open this up too. If I am moving along and there's a question that you have, please raise your hand. I'll repeat the question for Zoom land so they all can see it, but I don't want to glaze over and have you thinking about a question for the entire presentation and then forget it and it's an important question. Yes, perfect.
What is a water tender? Is it a big thing that you have?
Great. It is a water truck. So when you see a construction site and you see a big truck, big tank, and it's spraying water, that is what we call a water tender. For firefighters, we have just a much bigger pump on it. So in other words, we can pump more water, more pressure for our firefighter safety and suppression efforts. But ultimately, it looks just, a lot of times it looks very similar to a construction water truck.
And how does it get replenished?
Hydrants, and the movement of water tenders. So we have 5 water tenders here in our district. Phoenix has one, Scottsdale has one, Peoria has one, so all of our neighbors also have one. So when we have an incident and we have water tenders that get assigned to a certain area of the fire that may be stationary, the next water tender that comes in will fill them up and then they'll go get water. And then they'll come back and fill up other trucks. Does that make sense? So it's kind of like a bucket brigade on wheels. Okay, we try and bring the water to the incident rather than rely on any water that's at the incident, because where brush fires usually happen in areas that don't have a lot of water. Great question, thank you. Yes,
After you run out of water with fire tenders, where does the water, where do they get the water? Is there a reservoir?
so the question is, if we run out of water, the water tenders run out of water, then where do they get it? So it's just kind of that bucket brigade idea. So we're gonna use other trucks that go to a hydranted area. They're gonna refill and bring the water to those hydrants. And we're gonna constantly have trucks going in and out of the area, hauling water basically, to make sure that we can maintain a water supply at the incident. Yes.
So on that same vein, and so someplace like Desert Hills that doesn't, I'm guessing, have any fire hydrants? So
Sure.
why don't they have it? Why aren't they required?
So unincorporated areas don't necessarily fall under a city jurisdiction that would then require or have property taxes that pays for a water system that's in place. Unincorporated areas don't necessarily have them because there's nothing that requires.
Right. I get it.
However, your fire department, that is our job. So we know this problem, we know the areas that do have hydrants and we know the areas that don't. Whether it is a structure fire or a brush fire or anything, we bring the appropriate apparatus to make sure that we have everything we need. I know that one of the big concerns with water availability, and I assume why we're getting some questions on that, is in the Palisades, there was a lot of talk about no water, the hydrants are empty, right? Okay. In a city, most of the time, when you open a hydrant, you're gonna get water. Almost 10 out of 10 times, unless there's some other big thing going on. Water systems are built in loops, Okay, and I wish I had a picture for this, and I thought I might need to discuss this, but they're built in loops, okay? They have pressure coming in, usually on two sides of a loop. When you start pulling from one part of that loop, the pressure will slightly go down. And then you pull from another hydrant and it goes down again. Eventually, just like putting a hole in a water bottle, right? If I put one hole in a water bottle, it's gonna slowly leak out, but if I put two, it's gonna leak out faster. If I put three, it's gonna leak out even more. Eventually, the system itself just can't keep up with the number of open valves that are going on. In the Palisades, you had so much going on in so much of a widespread area, just the water system couldn't keep up with the demand that was being asked of it. It's not that they ran out of water or the reservoir ran dry, it's just the system couldn't maintain the pressure that was required in that loop because there were too many valves open at the same time. So really hard thing that without like a diagram to show you guys, but for us, I'll get to your question real quick, for us at Daisy Mountain, what's that?
I'm just saying, thank you, that was clear.
Okay, good, I'm glad it was clear. So for us at Daisy Mountain, we're used to not having water. So we are used to arriving on an incident, whether it's a structure fire or a brush fire, and not having a hydrant to rely on, which is why we have these water tenders, and we bring them to the show with us, and we call it water sector. Somebody's in charge of water sector, and water sector's job is to go get water and bring it to us so that we can maintain our response and safely.
So theoretically, we could have that same hydrant. Theoretically, we could have that same hydrant problem.
Theoretically, yes. The advantage that we have is we never rely on it in the first place. So even if we had an incident in Anthem that we knew was gonna be a growing incident, we are gonna be bringing water tenders to the show early on. And we'll be pulling from further water sources to try and overcome it.
So in the California fire, because they had that problem, was that a matter of not updating their system?
I don't know that I can get too much into beyond the physics of it. So, and get into maybe as to the whys, but the physics alone, even the best system in the world would have a hard time keeping up.
Thank you.
Yeah. Woo. Hey, I really like this. This is the kind of thing, so just so you guys know, I do have time at the end for questions as well. I'm gonna get to you too. I've got one more back here first.
You ever tap into swimming pools?
Do we use swimming pools? So we do, we can and we have, but it's not our first go-to. It just will depend on the situation and also access to a pool typically takes a little bit of maybe driving in people's yards. We don't like to do that. But we have used it. If you guys remember a few years ago, 2020, we were pulling water actually out of the golf course lake.
Yeah, that was
Remember that? Yes, yeah, so we're very creative. Okay, we're very creative as to where we're gonna get our water. And sometimes we'll ask for forgiveness rather than permission when it comes to water, which is why the golf course was quickly being used in that scenario.
What's the fire hydrant situation in Anthem Country?
What is the situation?
Do we have any or no?
Yes, so Anthem has a very healthy water system here. We work very closely with the water department as well, to the point that we actually send in reports for every gallon that we take out of a hydrant. So the relationship is that give and take, so we have a good communication, and that also helps them identify issues, right? If a fire truck pulls from a hydrant, on their end of things, it looks like they have a major leak, right? Because all of a sudden they see a drop in pressure and gallons leaving, so our communication to them is pretty spot on. They're typically working with us and we have a very healthy water system. Yes.
Okay, so I've already been told that this is probably Chris Reed that would have this question, but I'm sure this is the elephant in the room because there's so much brush and it's so high and we have so many dead trees and dead bushes and dead grass, especially in the country club for us. Right behind us, we have a huge wash that's just 6, 8, 10 foot fire
So-
kindlings, and it's terrifying.
So let me get to that, cause I have slides on that.
Okay,
And I have a great way for you guys to help us help you,
okay.
okay? And then I'll explain to some of the, maybe the red tape involved in just cleaning it all out, right? Which is our knee-jerk reaction is let's just get rid of it all. So I'll get to that here in the slide. Yes?
Yes, I just had a question about water. Once again, you said they 3,000. How many acres does it take?
So, that's a good question. 3,000 gallons of water, and how many acres does it save? Unfortunately, I would say the correlation is very weak correlation. And that's because it comes down to how good are we at using the water? Okay, some of us as structure firefighters, again, Daisy Mountain, we're one of the highest trained. And we know that water conservation of what we have in a tank is critical. Because every time that we run out means that we're losing ground or you have public or our own safety at risk. So in other words, we conserve our water and that's why you'll see us open and we'll move and then we'll close. And then we'll move where we need to be and then open rather than just having an open valve and just spraying wildly. So we conserve. So I will say that a 3,000 gallon water tender, so our frontline engines, at the second dot here, I say 6 engines. We respond to a brush fire with one engine, big engine, 750 gallons. One brush truck, that is 400 gallons. What does that put us at? About 1,100 gallons-ish, right? If it's topped off to the tip, and a water tender. One station responds with almost 4,000 gallons of water to a brush fire. That's a lot of water. So there's no good translation, but that's firepower when it comes to responding to brush fires and even structure fires. Remember, fully involved homes, big flames, 15, 20, that's what we're responding to with that as well. So and we're very, very good at it.
How many homes does it say?
Again, weak correlation because it's how we use it. It's how we use it. But maybe personal experience, fully involved 2-car garage, flames licking out of the front and everything. Just with the 750 gallons I have in the truck, I can almost put it completely out. Timing is everything, getting there quickly, there's so many things that go into it, but I don't need a lot of water to really do a good job. There's a ton of other complexities into it, but I can tell you we're very good with here at Daisy we train a lot on that.
I have a question for you. This brings to mind that the other surrounding communities and those growing all around us, don't you think at some point they need to have a better system so they can't rely on us if we have a problem? With fire hydrants or whatever they do, it all kind of falls into there's so many fire stations you have, that's what it is. But there's a community with larger populations now, more houses, more traffic, rush, more everything. Not to mention the country club, which we'll talk about later, I guess. So that's another issue. But can you kind of respond to that? Would it be helpful? And is Phoenix is on the other side of the highway? Are they involved with you?
Yes.
And then the county too?
Yes.
Okay, so you all work as a team on that.
Absolutely. So good question. Is increasing the infrastructure of the water systems directly around Anthem would it benefit Anthem? That's an easy answer of yes, of course. Is that something that'll ever happen? I'm not entirely sure because again, that's gonna go well over my head for county and everything else. That being said, I will say part of what we're in here, bullet number 4 here, if you guys can see, says automatic aid. Okay, automatic aid is a system where we all share resources. When you call 911 in Anthem, you typically get a Daisy Mountain truck. Has anybody seen a Phoenix truck in Anthem before? Okay, happens all the time. Has anybody seen a yellow truck driving around? Happens all the time. Automatic aid sees no boundaries. When you call 911, the closest engine in the entire valley is responding to your call, regardless of the city at which it came from. That means 56, that's right across from In-N-Out, in Tremonto area, they run Daisy Mountain calls all the time. And we run Phoenix calls all the time. It's a very much a give and take. And that goes the same for the water. The water is not limited. I can go touch any hydrant I want, whether it's a Peoria, Scottsdale, Anthem, it doesn't matter. Cave Creek Water, a private water company. That hydrant is available for me to use. So it's a give and take. Everybody is sharing water. And it's not a situation that typically is gonna be our biggest limitation in an early brush fire response. Does automatic aid somewhat make sense? Has anybody heard that concept before? We're very proud of that system. We've been a part of that system for
Years.
yes, Chief's not here, but over 20 years. We've been a part of that system. So we all train together. We go to regional academies. My academy was in 2015. I went to an academy with Peoria, Scottsdale, Glendale, Daisy Mountain, of course, Avondale, and Goodyear. I trained with all of those guys. We all got the same training 10 years ago. Yes.
You got 5 water tenders. How many does Phoenix have in the north area?
56 has one, 3,000 gallon, and 55, which is just a little bit further south, has another one. And then you also have, I believe, 3 in North Peoria and 3 or 4 in North Scottsdale.
So why do we have 5 and they only have 8?
Because most of our, probably about 80% of our district does not have hydrants. Phoenix has a lot more hydrants. Peoria, Scottsdale, they all have a lot more. They're a city municipal department, so hydrants is a lot more common in the city infrastructure.
Can we talk about the brush?
Yes, absolutely. Sounds good. So I already talked about state forestry, or Department of Forestry, Fire Management, U.S. Forest Service, and Bureau of Land Management. We coordinate. That's my job as a wildland liaison officer. And then we do the training, which I touch base on. Let's get my clicker connected. Hold on, technical difficulties as always. Okay, real quick, this is actually fairly important. Good, now my clicker's working. Oh, we'll go away now. So I might have to have somebody stand over here. We gotta go back to the fact that a lot of times the news, documentaries, everything is very dramatic when it comes to fire. We think of brush fires and fire moving through an area like a tidal wave, right? But let's remember that fire is only following these 3, the laws of physics, which is it needs oxygen, heat, and fuel in order to exist. Typically, us structure firefighters, brush firefighters, what we are trying to do is remove one leg of this triangle. We're either trying to take the heat out of the fire through use of water or remove the fuel, okay? We find this fire triangle hidden in what we like to call the fire behavior triangle. These 3 legs, weather, topography, and fuel, are what cause our fires to burn hotter, faster, move across a landscape. But they still require those 3 basic elements, right? Oxygen, heat, and fuel. However, when we have a fire on a landscape, we've got fuels, which is driven by the grass, the brush, everything that you guys see and are concerned about. But then depending on the day and the weather and the heat and how fast the wind is blowing and what direction the wind is blowing, will make a fire move through an ecosystem a whole lot faster or slower, depending on where we are at. Topography, when you change the arrangement of where those fires are on a landscape, you think fire wants to go faster or slower uphill? Faster, right? The heat, the convective column rises, and when you bring that fuel closer to it by putting fire on an elevation, it climbs up hills a whole lot faster than it would on flat ground. So this fire behavior triangle is critical in our tactics and strategies. When we arrive on brush fires, these are the 3 things that we're looking at, because it's going to tell us and give us a prediction as to how fast this fire is going to move across the landscape. What I want you guys, I've got a video for you that I'm going to show you, is that it's not always just the fire front, the flame front. All the fire flames that the video cameras always zoom in on of it moving, that is not always what burns houses down. That's not always what our biggest problem is, the embers and the fuels around it, that's where it comes into play. So when we're talking about what you guys can do to help us in fighting fires, is a lot of times before there's ever smoke in the air, is this fuel management. Land agencies will get to their responsibilities, but there is still a responsibility within your own property lines. One term I want to get you guys, educate is, has anybody heard us say WUI or the news say WUI, anything like that? That's our fun and fancy term for wildland urban interface. That is where our brush and our fuels and our open space meets a neighborhood, a home. That is what we call the wildland urban interface. This is oftentimes where we come into play, because if it weren't for the homes, you would see a much different tactics and strategies. We won't risk a lot for just trees, but we will risk a lot for your homes and people, right? And that's why you see us bring those water tenders, all those resources into it. This wildland urban interface is all of Daisy Mountain Fire District. Not just Anthem, not just the Washes, but all of our district is wildland urban interface. All of North Phoenix, Scottsdale is all fits this profile of where brush meets urban. Any questions on that?
Yes.
Yes.
My house is on one of the 404 washes that is not supposed to be touched or trimmed or thinned. What do we do about that?
Beat me to it. My next slide. This is such a difficult topic. So NAOS 404 washes are something that we've heard before. NAOS stands for Natural Area Open Space. I have to look and read it every time because I always forget. But 404 washes. What these are is they're classified as basically these natural drainages areas. They fall under federal jurisdiction because they have to do with our Clean Water Act. If we start messing with our drainages, then we start messing with our water. And we start messing with our water, that's our water table and a whole other list of agencies that start getting involved. One of the biggest concerns is that if we start messing with a bunch of the fuels, the live vegetation in these washes is we tend to overdo something and then we get erosion. And that erosion then takes a bigger part in our clean water and it starts kind of downriver being an issue. So a lot of the questions that we get, when I was in Chris's shoes in the state and in my shoes now, is what do we do about these washes, right? If we're not allowed, it's federally regulated. What does federally regulated mean? It means there's red tape and there's a permit required to do anything. However, what I want to let you guys know is we work closely with HOA. If you guys remember, Anthem a few years ago did quite a bit of a cleanup on a bunch of the washes that were along some of your major roadways. Part of that was based on this permit system. Most of you, the biggest concern you have is what's next to your house, correct? Dead and down, so anything that is underneath, that is dead and broken underneath the trees and vegetations that is within a 5 to 10 foot buffer of your wall is the only thing that you can really clean out and touch. I'm gonna get into how you can expand that. But as far as to not get in trouble with this Clean Water Act, you can get rid of the dead and down. So if it's broken, dead, dying on the ground, considered a fuel, a dead fuel, you can remove that from underneath the live vegetation. You cannot cut the live vegetation. The only thing that I think you can remove is what is that low chamomile, which is an invasive species. I can leave that up on the board and you guys can look, it's a noxious weed. It's that big yellow ball green weed that came through. It's called low chamomile. You can pull that, burn it, well, don't burn it, please don't burn it. You can pull it, you can get rid of it, you can kill it. That is an invasive species. So that is something that if it falls within the, that 5-10 foot buffer, you can absolutely, it doesn't matter if it's live, get rid of it. It is taking over the entire back. I'm gonna get to what you can do in your property, because unfortunately for you guys as homeowners, these washes, even for an HOA that has a lot of ability to get in here and do this. There's a lot of regulations for them to get in there, so that 5 to 10 foot off your wall, you can get rid of all that dead down. And get rid of it.
He's saying 5 to 10, that's a big difference. Because we've been told it was 3, now you're saying 5 to 10, so if I clear out 10 feet behind my view fence, I'm good.
So again, if we're only touching the dead fuel, that is the only thing we're allowed to touch in the NAOS anyways. Most of us don't wanna go 10 feet beyond our wall, because that, if you look at it, is a lot of work. I will tell you, based on this right here, what I'm gonna get into is your property, is the 5 feet is all you really need to worry about. Because
Landscaper doesn't, I don't know.
the landscape.
Sorry, and if I can, I just want to make
Yep.
sure that it's very clear to residents. That area behind your wall in most cases is not your private property. Beyond that wall is either association property, it might be county property, it might be golf course property, ACC property. So that, again, you can only do clearing on your own private property. Beyond that, it would be the property owner's responsibility. In the Anthem Country Club, your properties that abut our owned land, we offer a 5-foot fire break clearance, which, you know, in conjunction with the fire department, allows them the proper access back there. So that's done on a regular rotation. And residents do have the ability to submit a request, if you need to do that outside of the regular rotation. I cannot speak for council or Parkside. And then for the golf course, they would be responsible for any maintenance on their property. And so you would need to contact the golf course.
Speaking of the golf.
How much is that? Are you saying,
Those would be all questions for the golf course. I don't manage the golf course. I don't have anything to do with that oversight.
are you saying that if I called Megan Hill, said, Megan, would you clear 5 feet beyond my view fence? You'll do it?
If you live in the country club and your back of your yard backs up to property that is owned by the Anthem Country Club Community Association, you offer a 5-foot fire break clearance that our landscape vendor will put into a work order and go out and do. We do it on a regular schedule, particularly with paint, the wall and fence maintenance and painting. So that's the regular schedule. But in between that, if you have a concern, you can submit the desert maintenance request form to staff. And we will do a work order and send our team out to do the 5-foot clearance.
That's exactly what they did for me, and it's worked out really well. And they're very cooperative and they do a wonderful job. The only problem is that the rest of the dead stuff is in the country club and they don't want to do anything. For all due respect to them, and they want us to pay to help them on their own property. And it's not fair for the HOA to get involved, that you gotta stop. But the question I would ask is, doesn't the country club have to go by the same rules and regulations that everybody else does?
And I don't want to speak for the fire department, so please, correct me if I'm wrong. One of the things in all my time of working in HOA and kind of dealing with these types of situations, all of this at this time is a recommendation. So even the 5-foot fire break clearance behind the wall is a recommendation, it is not a requirement. So for those living in communities that they offer that fire break clearance, they are doing that as a recommendation, not a requirement, so that it's a benefit to the homeowners there. So in some cases, while we think that would be something they would want to do, it is not required, so they don't have to.
But the country club has said to many people I hear, and I can't, this is not official news, I don't know anything about, but they do say if you want things trimmed where it's close to you and you want to get rid of it, you pay us, we'll do it for you on their property. So we have to pay for their property, as we are still paying the $300 a month.
Yeah, so just to clarify, because we've talked to Monty, so those of you who have property that's adjacent to the golf course. Okay, it sounds like many of you do. You need to talk to Monty.
Where is
Well,
he?
that's, so we talked to Monty, you need to talk to Monty, you need to send your cards and letters. Right now, Monty's policy, and I'm not here. But the policy is he'll charge you a fee, and I think it's $350. And he's also, I know there has been brush that has been built up from either neighbors who have built their own brush piles or from the landscapers. And so he has talked, and I have asked him specifically about that because it's concerns that we have. He has said that he, and I don't know if he's done it yet or not, but he has told us that he would turn that into a priority to eliminate those brush piles. But bottom line, those of you who have that situation, you honestly need to get to Monty because, as Megan correctly said, he owns that land. Okay, so that's the person who's responsible for that issue.
Okay, so can I just ask you, so if you, you guys are talking about the 5 feet. I'm talking about what's beyond that, because our 5 feet is all clear, that's not the issue. Our concern is because our wash is extremely large, and we have 10, 20-foot trees behind there that are dead. And big, huge bushes, it's gonna take one kid with a cigarette to just throw it out the window and we're all toast. And so my question, we all know that, but my question is, you said something about, I understand that it's a natural drainage area and that a federal permit system is in play. So what would be the process for that to be addressed by the powers that be in the federal government or whoever is blocking or keeping them from or protecting them from doing it?
So let me address a couple things here first. So the NAOS 404 washes, because of their current status and the Clean Water Act, is a much bigger politician-sized issue than even just coming down here to what we are all concerned about. Us as a fire department have the ability to write recommendations of what needs to be done. Communities like the HOAs and you all and your concerns are the ones that are able to put together also letters for sending to, and I will work with Megan to get some more specific email addresses and who it goes to, and working with Chris as well. But it's the more groups that get together and submit these, the more likely something can be done. The responsibility of cleaning them doesn't fall necessarily on us as the fire department. What I want to get to for you guys, just to finish up my portion for you guys, to give you guys some more tangible things you can do that fall under within your property line, because I have a video that's really going to show you that it's not necessarily the tree on the other fence, behind the fence, or even the tree that's 100 yards down the way that is necessarily going to be the reason that your house burns down. It's the ember landing in a good spot. And so it's what can you guys do to your house to make it more fire resistant that doesn't take anything more than your normal home maintenance around, is just where it is. So that's what I want to focus on as far as my portion goes for you. And that's what I want to finish up here. As far as getting into the nitty and gritty, as far as how we do something about those NAOS washes, let me work with your elected officials, from me, from the fire department, and my other partners and agencies to give you guys better answers there.
Thank you, that would be helpful.
Is that good? I'm not trying to dodge here, but I don't have a great answer right off the microphone.
I live in the country club, and I don't have any federal washes in it. I have a country club, a golf course. Is there any way you guys, as the fire department, could tour through there, write a letter saying this is a fire hazard to money, you need to do that?
I can answer that.
Yes.
5 years ago, a letter was given that lead by one of your chief, I don't know if it's the same one. It was circulated, it was sent to the HOA, it was sent to the golf course. We had issues because I live on Simmons and the 12th fairway, and we had brush that was actually coming through our view fence. And so I put in a request to whoever you had to do, I put it to HOA, told it's not the HOA, you have to put it into the golf course. I put it in the golf course, I said, no, you have to speak to the HOA. So it went back and forth a number of times, and I had that letter that was given by Daisy Mountain. And I said to them, I said, it needs to be taken care of, and I'll do it myself.
And they said, well, if you do it yourself, you're gonna be charged, because you're not allowed to do it. I said, if I'm not allowed to do it and you don't do it, then what happens if there's a fire? Who's responsible for that? Because you have a letter from the chief of Daisy Mountain recommending that you should make sure that if there's a 5-foot buffer behind the house, especially if there's dead brush or brush coming through people's view fence. And it took a while, and they finally came out and they did do it. Now, Monty wasn't here. So whoever was in charge of the community at that time, 5 years ago, had agreed. And even though I got billed for $900 for their time, they waived it. So it is a precedent that was done, just letting everybody know it was done. And if Monty doesn't want to acknowledge that, that's another issue. But your fire chief did send the letter out, which I had. Unfortunately, I probably trashed it, otherwise I would have brought it to the meeting.
Just before you, I think that's a good point. What about the county? Maricopa County, what about the city of Phoenix? What about the other municipalities that have rules and regulations on how this land is supposed to be taken care of? And the golf course sits on it, it's still under their jurisdictions. Is that
So jurisdiction is one of the big things. So for us here at Daisy Mountain, our ability to do any vegetation manipulation on anything other than our own Daisy Mountain property is not something that we can do. That is not what the your taxes pay for. You pay for Daisy Mountain and your property taxes for us in a response fashion. We're not we don't manipulate vegetation on individual properties. That kind of thing gets messy quick, especially when you have to do with different jurisdictions, different properties, everything else. What we can do, and the letter that I think you're referencing to, is we can absolutely, through our expert knowledge, I don't want to have a big head here and say I'm the expert, but I would be the one that would come out and look and say, yes, this is a concern, and we can write a letter of support to having it done. But that doesn't mean we're on the hook for it being done. It's not our property, it's not our jurisdiction. We can support a plan to have it mitigated. And then that's what goes into those support letters, those group letters. That's kind of what Firewise gets into, is a grassroots effort that then pushes change and working with your HOA to go the next step up for management.
If we can, just in the sake of time, I want to make sure we can get through the full presentation. I'd like to just allow that to get finished and then we can open it up to some questions.
And just one comment on this. I just want to say, whether that letter is possible or not, I think it's appropriate for us to look into it to see if we can apply pressure that way from the fire department. So we'll see if that's even possible. So working with the board, I think that's reasonable, Rick. Would you agree? So I think that could be a good follow-up, just to stop this conversation, because I think we've beaten it to death, and I really want him to teach us what he can, because he's got some really good information.
Let me just very quickly say, I was on the committee 12 years ago, so when the committee for the ACC that wanted to have Anthem designated as a Firewise community, and I, along with a couple other people on the committee, went and filled out the application, did what we had to name Anthem the entire community a certified Firewise community. In doing that, I had to speak with Robert Doomer from the Army Corps of Engineers, who manages the 404 washes for Anthem, and he was the one who approved it back in 1999. He was very familiar with it, and so I have some degree of background and understanding of how that came about. At that time, he indicated, I don't want to take much more time, he indicated that, you would need to get some help from the fire department to get possibly authority from Army Corps of Engineers to allow them to go in to clear dead brush. But when I say them, we change that. Where the fire department might acknowledge that there was a fire hazard, that would then only give some person, HOA or country club, golf course, the authority to go in and clear out the brush. I won't take up much more time, but I do have some knowledge and background to answer those questions about where you go.
Thank you. Okay. So you guys bring up a very common issue, and this is nationwide, is I can't touch what's on the other side of my fence. I can only touch what's on my side of the fence, right? That is, as far as where you guys are at, I agree with your frustrations. I respond to those fires that are in those areas that haven't been touched, and they become, my problem the second they're on fire, right? They're always, I can't drive through the area, so, but that level of frustration. So then what we resort back to is some of these fire-wise principles, which is we can only affect change on what's on our side of the fence and what's our property. So then how do we do that and what does that look like? So that is where we come up with this term defensible space. This is a lot of times very small things that you can do that you can greatly increase the survivability of your home in the event of a nearby brush fire. So this is a concept of you helping yourself, but us also helping you by the work that you're doing in your property and creating defensible space. Because if you create defensible space, I am more safe in going in and protecting your home through these principles. So this defensible space typically comes down to this zone 1, 2, and 3. You guys can see this specifically talks about zone 1 and 2. Zone 1 is that first 30 feet, and then zone 2 is beyond. This is up for, here's another good slide. Oh, this clicker just doesn't want to follow me. There you go. This is a slide I put in there. This is actually from the IKEA fire. This was the fire that was in the wash of 27th Avenue, just north of Carefree Highway. This house is on Joy Ranch. What do you think, besides the storage that's in the back of this, do you see the defensible space? You see everything that burned around it, but the home and the property is still standing. This is what the principles of defensible space. Now, I know that most of us will raise our hand and say, well, I don't have an acre or 2 acres to manipulate, right? So this is where FireWise is oftentimes a community-based concept, is that if you do your part and your neighbor does their part, you now have 2 properties that both have defensible space, which both makes your property even safer, okay? Because here is probably a little bit, this is the zones 1, 2, and 3 that for somewhere like Anthem, where we have a little bit closer, these are the zones that I like to refer to, which is that 0 to 5 feet right next to your house is zone 1. The 5 to 30 feet, if you have it, is zone 2, and zone 3 oftentimes is what's on the other side of the wall. So zone 1 and 2 is what we have the most control over. This zone 1 is where we want to remove as much flammable material away from the structure. So that would mean if you have some grasses or something that are growing in your planter right next to the house, that would not be as good of an option as maybe some cactus or some more fire-resistant plants that you still want to look at. Also, not having mulch within that first 0 to 5 feet and having either rock or manicured area, which most of us typically do. Then zone 2 is where we're just going to oftentimes manipulate the fuels. Now, we all want trees. We all want shade from those trees. What's important here is just limbing those trees up and getting the branches up to a 4 to 5 foot, granted the size of the tree. That way, if there's any active flame underneath them, it can't get into the crown of the tree or the bigger part of the tree and cause more of an issue. So this is where we call lifting the crown. Okay, so that's where we take the dead branches underneath and we lift that up so that way we refer to it as ladder fuels, right? Ladder fuels, how do we climb a ladder? To run, right? Well, if we remove some grass and we remove the lower branches, we're removing the first and second rung of the ladder for fire to climb into vegetation and be bigger flames and a bigger problem. So this zone 1 and 2 is what we have the most effect over. Zone 3, this is where we're going to get into property in the Anthem area that we oftentimes can't touch, or if you have a larger property, this is where we're going to be a little less aggressive and follow some of these principles. Let's see if I can. Tried something different and it's not working. Oh, there we go. Okay, here's my movie time. So this is a 4-minute video. very interesting. I'm gonna give you guys some background and then I'll kind of talk over it, but I want to lay the playing field. An insurance research facility basically built a house on a giant turntable. Okay, a giant turntable. They built like 30-foot by 30-foot house. You guys will see it. On each side of the house, they built it with different materials and they surrounded it with different materials and different vegetation. Then they exposed it to an artificial ember shower. Ember showers is what you see exactly in that picture that produces by brush fires. When we get these really hot fires moving through some real heavy fuels, they produce these embers, and when there's a lot of it, we call it a shower. What's important is where these embers land. So this video slowly turns the house and exposes different sides of the house to this ember shower. What I want you guys to remember is this house at no point in time was touched by direct flame impingement from the head of a moving fire. It was only exposed to embers and wind. That's it. Most of you in your homes, in the neighborhoods that you live, you'll be unlikely to be touched by a main head of the fire, but more likely to be touched by these embers. And this is why it's so important to look at this video and see areas that you could reduce some of these receptive fuels that these embers are landing. Receptive fuels is who's got the garage that likes to collect all of the neighborhood's leaves?
Collect what?
All of the neighborhood's leaves. Everybody's leaves go into your garage. Mine too. My neighbor has a bougainvillea, those big, beautiful red leaf bougainvilleas. They're beautiful, except for every leaf goes in my garage. Why? Because the wind typically comes out of the southwest, goes right between our houses. It grabs the leaves out of that bush and deposits them right inside my garage. Not bitter at all. I love that bush. In the event of a brush fire that is south of my home, there is no brush by my house at all. But if there are embers, where do you think those embers are gonna go? Exactly where those leaves go. So you can think of the spot in your backyard, the corner in your patio, the leaves in your gutter. Those are the areas that embers are going to land because there's leaves there. If leaves get there, they're deposited by the wind in just everyday life. That's where the embers would go at the same time. So that's why it's so critical for us. Just a leaf blower can make a drastic difference in reducing the risk of your guys' fire risk. So let me play this video. Don't worry if there's no sound to it. In fact, I hope there's not sound to it.
I just want to mention quickly for those on Zoom, we're gonna try to do the video. Sometimes they don't work on Zoom, so if it's something we can share after, we will do so.
So I'm actually gonna turn the sound off. Zoomland, oh, perfect, you got it up there, you're on it. See, I did something, oh wait, hold on. It's not working right. It's just not on the right screen, hold on a second. Can you guys see the Zoomland video? Let's see if I can get it.
Only on the small
So it's
screen.
not showing on Zoom for those in attendance on Zoom, but we can run it from this TV here.
Just expand my screen, second. This is what I get for. See there?
Yeah.
All right, we got it. Okay, so once again. We've built this house on a giant, I won't talk over the words, you guys. This video is called the IBHS Ember House. And you can see here, right now what we're looking at is a shake shingle, an asphalt shingle. They did not do a tile roof on this. Asphalt shingle and tile roofs in brush fires and embers operate a lot of the same as far as the protection that they get you. So what they're doing is they're loading a giant generator full of mulch and they're gonna put it through an incinerator and create some embers. This is where they're gonna put different vegetation, they're putting in some mulch on one side, they'll put in block on the other. Part of the house is built with vinyl siding, another part is built with wood. You've got vinyl gutters, you've got steel gutters, you've got an open window, a closed window, they thought of this all, okay? So there's your ember shower. And they're experiencing, 10 to 20 miles per hour of wind, that's extremely common for us in our area. And here is, once again, here's these embers just landing on the house and in what we would call these receptive fuels. And just with a little bit of wind on them, look at the fires that start, and where they start. They start in gutters, what's that? Fire can make its own weather, a lot of times it's gonna be, the dominant weather of the area though that is causing most of your movement. So that right there falling down is just a vinyl gutter and leaves that were in that vinyl gutter. Now they're slowly rotating the house. Here you can see a vinyl screen that's on the window. Most of us in a brush fire situation would not leave our actual glass windows open. In this they do because they want to see how embers move through a window screen in the event. So we'll get to that in a second. So again, this house is now being impacted by fire, but just was exposed to embers. So what I want you guys to see, this just all had some leaves sitting in the gutters here. I'm pointing on the screen for those of you in Zoom land. It's just the leaves that were sitting in the gutter. Now the house is gonna turn slightly and you guys are gonna see an eddy in the corner of the house. Once again, right there, that was embers that started, they landed in mulch and they grew into a little bit of flame. And then with the wind picking up and the heat picking up and everything, you get this eddy effect on the backside of the house or on this corner. And now our house is being almost fully involved here from just the embers. What's catching fire is what is within your ability to change and modify.
The wash, then, well, the embers would come from the wash.
Potentially the embers would come from the wash if that's where our fire is, but the embers and where they're landing and the leaves in your property and the bushes that they're landing in and everything. That is within your control and what you can adjust.
If that's a perfect world where we do that, the embers and the wash that fly through here. What do we do about the wash that has the embers if the fire starts there?
So that's our next step, and that's my job, is the suppression of the wash, okay? My job is the suppression of the wash, and that's what you pay me for, right? If the fire starts in the wash and there's an incident, 911, that's where I come in, and my goal is to create as little embers for you guys as possible. I understand that our main concern is the fuel before the fire, I understand that, but my job is to make sure that that stays put in the wash and less embers. But I can't guarantee every ember is gonna stay where that fire is, and so by just regular maintenance of your home, choosing the right plants around your house, and that 0 to 5 with our stucco homes, that is really the most important part. Because our stucco homes, the siding, we're not dealing with melting siding, right? We're not dealing with a lot of the products that we use on our homes with a tile roof and the stucco siding are pretty fire resistant to begin with. But everything is only as fire resistant as what it's surrounded by. So let me grab my video back here. Let's go ahead and slide. You guys see we're back. So the next program to always check out for you guys is we have a reverse 911 system. So in the event that we ever do have evacuations orders due to a brush fire in the area, similar to like the IKEA fire, it's important for you to check the Ready Set Go program, which is wildfire or wildlandfire.az.gov. Chris, do you have anything on this?
No, if you got questions, I got door hangers in the back, so it's got the website, you can get set up with text alert, all that.
Perfect, so what that is when we get a fire, we're responding and it's getting bigger or something like that. We're gonna initiate evacuations and through this Ready, Set, Go program, which is a Maricopa County reverse 911 system. So now your phones are gonna go off, your emails are gonna get emails, you'll see it on their Instagram, is all going to list what is being evacuated and why. Name of the fire, size of the acres, that's all gonna be provided. So it's important, and I'm so glad that he brought the door hangers to grab one of those on your way out and just make sure you're registered with that. Because that's then our alert system when we have a fire that is moving beyond our ability to stay with it. This is the notification you're gonna get to evacuate. Is there questions on this Ready, Set, Go program? Okay, good, I'm glad. Is most of you familiar with this Ready, Set, Go program?
Where do you go?
So where you go, the system is gonna tell you. So that's just it, by us activating this system for you guys registering, it's gonna say you fall within an evacuation zone due to this fire. Please, these are the areas you can go, and that's gonna be a Red Cross area for you to go to, and you're gonna have food and water provided for you and all of that. So that is all part of this emergency evacuation system. Yes.
So that actually worked real terrific for my brother-in-law's brother there. There's many fires in California, but then when the Ventura fire happened, they don't live there, they live in Palm Desert, and so had a vacation home in Ventura. So they were vacationing, having a glass of wine, all of that, watching the ocean, went to bed, and for some reason, they both left their phones on either side of their bed. And their phones went off with that
With that
system.
notification.
It said, now, get out, now. And they didn't even have time to get their car. Their garage, the power was off and everything. They jumped in their neighbor's car and they all went, and every single house on that block went. So they saved their lives. It was wonderful.
So to give you guys a little bit, I want you to understand that this program exists, grab the door hanger, register, and look it up. I could spend a whole other, going into the intricacies of the actual system itself. But what I want you to know is you heard of the timeline and how narrow that timeline was. Our goal as your fire department is to be ahead of that to get you evacuated and moved well before you're in that much danger, okay? But you having this class and being in here, you know some of these risks and you're already doing things that is gonna increase the survivability of your home. That does not mean you should stay in your home because you've done some of this stuff. It still is an evacuation. It's still highly recommended for you guys to leave. That being said, our goal, we just did a simulation with the entire department. I had 9 different classes, each was 3 hours with every single crew in the department. That was a simulation of a fire moving through an area. And we talked a lot about when we're pulling the trigger for evacuations. And our goal is to give you guys as much time as possible to get out of these situations, should they occur. As far as this, grab that door hanger and look it up. It is not a geo-reference to your number, so you do not have to be within the area to get the notification. If you are out of town and your phone number is registered to your home that falls within, you're gonna get that page, even though you're not in your home. Does that kind of make sense? It's not where your phone is, it's the phone number that's attached to the address that's being evacuated. That's my timer going off saying, get off the stage. Creating defensible space can greatly increase the survivability of your home. It does not make it a fortress of solitude, it does not mean it is completely impervious. That's why when you get in an evacuation order, you're still highly encouraged to leave the residence. That being said, it's very little things. I'm telling you, I bought a rigid $100 little leaf blower. It's a job site leaf blower, and every single day I blow those darn leaves out of my garage and fly in. Every single day. It's become a ritual. I get home, I turn that thing on, and I blow those leaves right on out. It's those little things, those little habits that could really increase or reduce those fuels for embers to land in. It doesn't have to be the perfect day. It can be just a day like today where it was beautiful outside, it was a nice breeze, the fuel is still dry. So the more good habits we get into, the more landscapers that are just keeping the leaves out of those little nooks and crannies and the grass trimmed. Another good thing is if you do like plants in your planters, regardless of whether or not they're flammable, just good irrigation can drastically reduce its chances of being, of catching fire. Okay, a well-hydrated plant is just like a well-hydrated human, right? We are less likely to get into a chaotic situation with our own self if we're well-hydrated. Your plant is the same, it resists a lot of heat by just having a lot of, fuel in it, or a lot of moisture in it. That's it for me and this presentation. I am definitely open, so real quick before we go down the question field. I understand that we entered into a lot of the fuel management and how we go about that. What I want to answer with that for most of those questions is your fire department. We will support whatever we can for a community to go through and reduce that fuel. We just can't be the ones to do it. Our job falls within the 911. There's something going on, we respond. That being said, if you guys have questions about the fire department, our response, how we do some of this stuff, or about how you can make adjustments to your house, I can answer any of those. Yes.
We and several others here, I'm sure, have a fire suppression system built in. Is there anything in your experience, does that make a difference, and is that on the single hydrant system?
Yes, so a home that is sprinklered, a lot of you have sprinklered homes, a huge advantage. There's a huge advantage for your home inside. Now, those sprinklers go off when there's it reaches a certain environment inside the home, and those go off. So yes, it's a huge advantage to your home. It'll keep it, obviously, it'll open up a water source inside and keep any active fire at bay. The second stage to your question is that on the same water system? Yes, it is, but it's a much smaller pipe to your house in order to supply that one water sprinkler. And I would not be concerned as much as one water sprinkler going off and affecting the hydrant, even if it's in your front yard. On a global neighborhood scale, yes, again, we talk about the number of holes in a water bottle, that would be one additional hole in a water bottle. We can affect that if we are heading down that road by shutting those valves to the house to send more water to the hydrant. So again, from a physics standpoint, there are things that we can do to reduce the number of holes in the water loop system. Does that answer that question? Okay, I've got a question back to them.
How often are those supposed to get inspected?
Ooh, Chief Hamilton walked back in, thankfully. Yeah. So, do you know that specifically? Because I'm my best guess.
So from the vendors, the best that I've been told is annually. So you reach out to any one of the different fire suppression service vendors, have them come out, and they'll do a whole home inspection. They inspect the sprinkler heads, they inspect the valves, they make sure everything else is in good working order. That's the most appropriate answer that I can give you, along with smoke detectors. You want to make sure that you're checking your smoke detectors on an annual basis, make sure you change the batteries in them. And if your smoke detector is more than 10 years old, replace it. So one of those good habits to kind of get into for just your home care fire suppression knowledge, with those of you in the country club that do have the fire sprinkler system, kind of get on an annual thing. And I'm sure things happen every other year, whatever you're most comfortable with your home.
Yeah.
Just for you to so I moved here in 2002 to Boston, and I've been told in the old days that the fire guys would come to check the smoke detectors. Do they still do that?
We don't typically check them, and the reason being is liability. So, you know, it's one of those things to where it's a part of the home, it's part of the homeowner's responsibility. And there has been things in the past, not just necessarily Daisy Mountain, but just industry standard, where firefighters have gone and done things to the fire smoke detectors or things like that, may or may not have been done correctly. So therefore, from a liability standard, us as an organization cannot assume that liability, so we must refer to the professionals. Really good example. Most of your homes have AC power and battery backup. In some cases, when people change things out, you have to change those plugs. You have to change those plugs depending upon whatever you're putting in, so there's some wiring involved. So that's something we need to the electricians and to make sure that it's done in a professional manner and up to code. We, as a fire suppression industry, cannot assume that liability. I think that makes sense. We want to be helpful, but due to those type of things, we can't.
So would I hire an electrician to do that or a hand?
That is, go ahead.
Fire protection, a fire protection contractor would be your best bet because they're going to navigate both of those areas. When I say fire protection, there's, if you were to Google it, so we as a fire department can't recommend vendors, right? That would be unfair, that would be a conflict of interest for us. That being said, a quick Google to fire protection, contractors, thank you, I couldn't think of the word. Fire protection contractors, they're able to navigate the electrical side, the unit side. I wanna be clear, so we will not come inspect all of your smoke detectors, but if you have one going off in your house, that's a 911 call. That's us coming to make sure that is not a malfunction, there's no hazard going on, so there's a difference there. I wanna be clear that if it is going off, if it's constantly like beeping or something like that, if you're concerned on the safety side of things, we will come inspect that. But as far as just calling us to come like be your annual inspection, that would not fall under us.
Okay, I don't, I'm not sure I wanna go down this rabbit hole, because I know it's getting late, but, the issue. I know that this is probably a big answer, but we're very aware since they did all this construction on the freeway that there's no way out of here. We have one exit and it's only one way out of here. So if there is a fire, is there any reason that, or why can't we get out on 7th Avenue? The gate is always locked, and even when they had, well, that's the question. I said, if we're on fire, we're trapped in here, and if we have a gate that allows us to get out, we can't get out.
So in the event of a major evacuation like that, you're correct. We are kind of pigeonholed a little bit here in the community. There are, depending upon where the incident is, you may exit north and go through New River. We will work with Maricopa County and open that gate to allow evacuation profile to go through there. We did that with the Dia fire a couple of years ago to allow folks to be able to escape the Desert Hills area and to not overly congest the road system over in Desert Hills. We gave multiple different access points. So to answer your question, yes, depending where the incident is, we will try to make as much access to exit as possible. Because please keep in mind, we're trying to get into the party and you're trying to leave. We want you to have a safe and expeditious way to get out of the incident so we can get in. If it's congested for you to come out, that means we can't get in. So just like Will said earlier, excuse me, we will be working with our partners early on for road control, for road management, to open things up and to give you more options. That way we can direct you a certain way and fire apparatus are coming in a different way. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So, and I can speak loudly for this one. So in the IKEA fire, we opened up that 7th Avenue gates, not for Anthem to get out, but for those in Desert Hills to get out as another access to the north. So we do this with flooding all the time too. Monsoon season, we will get some of our in New River, kind of that Honda Bow area, will get trapped on the wrong side of the river and don't have any way to get out. So we'll open the gate into Anthem to get those residents out. So those gates, we do have access to them. We can lock them open underneath emergency.
So that can, 7th Street can be open.
It absolutely can.
That will be.
It will be in an emergency situation. Yeah, you really don't have to worry about that. Our trucks automatically open them, and I have a key that locks it open. Okay. Day-to-day operation, I don't want you to think that that's gonna be the norm in an emergency situation. Day-to-day operation is much different than emergency scenarios. Yes.
How many gallons of water did you say a tender holds?
So the question is, how many gallons a tender will hold? So we have 4 of our 5 trucks hold 3,000 gallons of water.
3,000?
One of our trucks holds 2,000, and that's just for modification's sake of the truck.
Well, you know, that's not very comforting. I figure the average pool in Anthem probably holds 12 to 15,000. So that's not much water to be carrying around.
So this is where that sounds like it's not a lot of water, but what I want you to have trust in is your firefighters and the training that we have, and how we use those.
I don't contest that for a minute. I'm a big hero of the firefighters, believe me. I've attended meetings all over. But I was just sitting here thinking, 3,000 gallons.
Yeah.
That's not even a quarter of a-
So that is why we train so hard on our water conservation, especially on brush fires, and why we use different hoses, we use different nozzles, we have a lot of ways to conserve the water. So that we can make that water last as long as possible. When you get over 3,000 gallons, you start moving into a truck that is too big to even make access into some of our areas that need it. So we have to find that happy medium of mobile, yet have a lot of water. Yeah.
Okay, maybe one more question.
Great deal there. What do we need to do, Megan,
That's what
to start the ball rolling to
he
get
wants
our
to address
wash
that.
cleared?
Listen,
We want, no,
just listen, he's gonna tell you.
okay, what we need to do is get our wash cleared. So what do we do, Megan?
I have to know the property, if it's
All of
ACCA
the
property.
obviously, there's a lot of people, all different.
Yeah, it goes back to the NAOS restrictions that we have. So as the fire department mentioned, any information that you can provide, and we'll get it sent on, if I can get the contact from the county, city officials that actually set those restrictions in place and have those. We can share that with the residents so that you can send in comments, the more comments that they get.
Okay, so regarding the NAOS, so from a state's perspective, I oversee Scottsdale, so Scottsdale has one of the more strict NAOS policy. So again, if the watches are NAOS and the protected land, what my recommendation is going to be, put the efforts back on you as residents. So, do you mind putting that slide with the home in the zones? So I hear a lot of conversations about washes, washes are overgrown, they're matured, they're stressed, they're dehydrated, they're gonna burn, right? Vegetation all around the home, this is perfect. So vegetation all around the home, it's gonna burn at some point. If it's combustible, it's gonna burn. So what we wanna do when we talk fire-wise defensible space is how do we harden the home from fire and embers? So as we saw in the video, it's gonna access any sort of attic vents, gable vents, patio furniture, flower pots, little cracks and crevices around the garage door. So to answer the question over here about the wash, yes, you might have a wash here. But fire brands have been recorded to travel 3 to 5 miles ahead of the flaming front and ignite spot fires. So you might have a fire over maybe down near the factory that's burning, Anthem experiences southwest winds, correct? So any fire that's out there, even maybe west of 17, down near Van Avery, if the smoke column is laying over Anthem, fire embers are gonna fall out with it. So it might not actually be the flame that's impinging on the community that has actually penetrated the community and is actively burning the washes. It could just be the ember shower like Will had showed, that's what's happening in the home. And what we've been finding through 30 years of post-fire investigations, research, like what Dr. Jack Cohen did, is we have a whole case study, which I'll share with you guys if you're interested, the Waldo Canyon fire in Colorado. What it was is a fire west of Colorado, burned through a community unscathed. 2 days later, it entered the next community, and took like 380 something homes. What they found was one home was a weak point within like a strip of homes, and once that one home was ignited and consumed, it spread from home to home. So again, it had nothing to do with the flame impingement on the structure itself, or even at that point, it's ember wash. If the home ignites and you don't have exposure protection, which I think is what they do structure side, usually like what, second, third give in, you'll hear them say take exposure. That's what it is.
So a lot of the newer communities, the homes are stacked on top of each other, so if one home ignites, it can generate enough heat through convection and radiation to ignite the next home next to it. So, I understand the washes are overgrown, I worked with the Forest Service for 12 years. We got really good at suppressing fire, and because of that, we didn't allow fire to do what it is designed to do, which is burn the landscape, reset the ecology. And now we're having to play about 100 years worth of catch up now. So again, as the Megan, right?
Yes.
So as Megan mentioned, again, we're talking washes. Washes are not your guys' property to enter. That's the community's responsibility. So again, from a residential standpoint or a homeowner standpoint, what can you do to harden your home? And then raise the concerns to the community. That's where myself as the state, specifically for Firewise, because I'm the Firewise regional coordinator for the state. We can come out, I can come in, I can join, Will, Chief Hamilton, I can support the department, I can bring a few extra people within our shop and we can have the conversation, so.
Great. So if there's not any other questions, I will be hanging out here for a little bit longer, so we can kind of end the Zoom call, we can kind of end the formal presentation of this. Again, we as your fire department, we're gonna support our communities, we're gonna do what we can to support you guys in this endeavor. And I'll work with, we also have a fire prevention officer that is a 40-hour employee here that also can work on these projects that are a little bit bigger than just us as the fire district. And so that's something that will come out of meetings like this, is that, yes.
In Anthem, fortunately, the houses aren't butted up against each other. But there's one section of Anthem, Paseo. Every house is close. Every house has gutters around it. Every house has tall trees. Perfect spot for the catastrophe.
So the home ignition is.
Therefore, I have my gutters cleaned every year. My Paseo property, even though I don't live there. That's a perfect place to have a problem.
It is, so to his point, he's talking about some neighborhoods that do have homes that are a little bit closer and gutters, whatnot. Again, that falls under my job. When there is an incident, we have tactics and strategies to stop the home to home spread. That is where we come in, we have tactics and strategies to stop that home spread. Because we can't move homes, right? So, anyways, that'll be it, and then, again, I'll be up here, for.
I've seen you many times, I apologize.